Thank you very much for the introduction. In the first part of my presentation, I will talk about the democratic deficit, the evolution of the role of national parliaments, and in the second part of my presentation, I will talk about the subsidiarity mechanism and the Romanian regulation. So, in order to examine the role of the national parliament, in our case Romania, in relation to the EU, we must touch upon the problem of the democratic deficit, with, which I try to say that the democratic deficit means an insufficient level of democracy in political institutions and procedure in comparison with the theoretical ideal of a democratic government. Based on available information, the first one who used this term was David Marquand in 1979, and in his analysis he highlighted that the European Parliament faced a democratic deficit because its members were not directly elected by the citizens until the first election held. The European Parliament plays a key role in this case because as it is the only EU institution whose representatives are directly elected now. And the problem is that its role is secondary despite being on the same level as the Council. It is also noteworthy that the Council, as the most important EU legislator, is not elected by the citizens and is very distant from them. The Lisbon Treaty introduced a new approach trying to restore citizens' trust in democratic decision-making in the EU. The strategic goal of creating a community with a human face and citizen-friendly has been on agenda since 1969. Now I will talk about the evolution of a national parliament, and I would like to say that in the European Union that's changed a lot over the time. In parallel with the EU's expansion and evolution of powers, the democratic deficit began to grow. Initially, the national parliament's role was to help with the integration, deepening and broadening it, but they had a marginal role in community affairs. The first big turning point was in 1973 when the UK and Denmark, when was the accession of the Denmark and the United Kingdom. This was a big point in the history of the European Union because of these countries. Their parliaments were traditionally more powerful than other countries in the European Union, and they set an example for the other countries. Then in 1979 there was another big change when the members of the European Parliament were directly elected. Another point was the Maastricht Treaty when increased the majority voting in the Council and introduced the co-decision procedure. This gave the European Parliament equal power with the Council on certain areas. The treaty also had two important declarations, the Declaration 13 and 14. Declaration 13 emphasized the need for national parliaments to play a bigger role in the EU. It pointed out that for this to happen, they needed better access to information. And Declaration 14 suggested regular meetings, known as the Conference of Parliaments, or as CISIS, to encourage cooperation between national parliaments and the European Parliament. In 1999 was the Treaty of Amsterdam, but it didn't quite live up to the expectation when it came to involving national parliaments. Finally, the Lisbon Treaty really made a difference. It's not only strengthened the European Parliament's power, making the EU more democratic, but it also gave national parliaments a bigger role, boosting democracy at the national level too. The Treaty of Lisbon gave national parliaments real power in several important areas. For example, I want to mention powers related to the primary law, examination of subsidiarity, information rights, the ability to initiate judicial proceedings, and the establishment of interparliamentary cooperation. And now I would like to talk about the subsidiarity control mechanism. The legal basis of this mechanism is Article 5 of the Treaty of the European Union and Protocol number 2, which covers how the principles of subsidiarity and proportionality should be applied. While the Lisbon Treaty didn't introduce the principle of subsidiarity, it did build on what was already in place under the Amsterdam Treaty, giving national parliaments clearer framework and more opportunities to oversee this principle. There are two key protocols. Protocol number 1, which emphasized the role of national parliaments, requiring the EU documents and proposal must be forwarded to them without delay, so they can review them before the Council of the European Union makes a decision. And protocol number 2 makes sure that European Commission takes into account regional and local factors in its legislative proposals and explain how the principle of subsidiarity is respected. If national parliaments believe a proposal violates subsidiarity, they can object. This forces the proposal to be reviewed, and the Commission can either keep it, change it, or withdraw it. The monitoring of subsidiarity is optional for each parliament, national parliament, but it becomes more effective and significant when a sufficient number of parliaments jointly issue a negative signal, which can even reverse an EU legislative process. With the entry into force of the Lisbon Treaty, national parliaments gained two types of oversight rights. On the one hand, there is the so-called ex-ante preliminary national parliamentary control, in which national parliaments examine a draft EU legislative act, and in the case of objection, can adopt a reasoned opinion. On the other hand, there is also the possibility of the ex post subsequent review, where already adopted and published legal acts are examined, and if doubts arise, national parliaments can initiate a so-called subsidiarity mechanism. The impact of reasoned opinions on the legislative process varies depending on how many national parliaments issue reasoned opinions and how many votes the member states in question hold in total. Each of the national parliaments is entitled to 2 votes. In the case of Romania, since it is a bicameral parliament, the 2 votes are divided between the Senate and the Chamber of Deputies. Yes. And now I would like to talk about the ex-ante national parliamentary control. Under the early warning procedure, national parliaments or any chamber of a national parliament have 8 weeks from the date of the draft legislative act is forwarded to submit a reasoned opinion to the President of the European Parliament, the Council, and the European Commission. This opinion must explain why the draft does not comply with the principle of subsidiarity. If reasoned opinions account for at least 1/3 of the votes allocated to national parliament, the draft must be reviewed, triggering what is known a yellow card. This threshold is lower, 1/4 for draft legislative acts relating to freedoms, security, and justice. In both cases, the Commission has 3 options after the review, either to maintain the proposal in its original form, amend it, or withdraw it. And an even stronger mechanism is the so-called orange card procedure, but in my presentation I would like to talk about the yellow card procedures. And there was 3 yellow card procedures until now. The first was in 2012, and it was a significant moment because this was the first time when 12 parliamentary chambers from different EU countries formally opposed the legislative proposal from the European Commission. The achievement was possible thanks to an impressive level of cooperation between national parliaments. The yellow card was aimed at the Monti II regulation, which dealt with balancing the right to collective action with the freedom to establish and provide services across the EU. However, Romania didn't participate in this process as it didn't submit a reasoned opinion during the yellow card procedure. The second yellow card procedure was in 2013, when the card issued it response to a proposal for a council regulation on the European Public Prosecutor's Office following recent opinions from different national parliaments, accounting for a total of 18 votes. A review of these recent opinions reveals that the national parliaments were motivated by a range of views, suggesting a lack of collective consensus. Some like the UK, Dutch, and Irish Parliament opposed the proposal, taking a traditional interpretation of subsidiarity, arguing that such legislation should be introduced by member states. Others, such as Hungarian and Romanian parliaments, were generally supportive of the public prosecutor, but concerned about the Commission's level of control, making subsidiarity a more relevant issue for them. Confronted with this mixed response, the Commission chose not to modify the proposal. And the last one was in 2016, in May, when parliamentary chambers objected to the Commission's proposed revision of the Posted Workers Directive. The proposal sparked strong reaction, especially from national parliaments in Central and Eastern European countries, which submitted numerous opinions. Romania here also submitted a recent opinion, both chambers, chambers of deputies and the Senate. And now I turn about the legislation of Romania. Romania has a semi-presidential constitutional system with a bicameral parliament, meaning it has two chambers, as I said, the Chamber of Deputies and the Senate. Although both chambers are elected using the same system and represent the will of the same voters, they have different numbers of members. Since 2011, both chambers have their own European Affairs committees. These committees are responsible for reviewing draft EU laws, either on their own or together with other standing committees. And now I would like to talk about the monitoring compliance with the principles of subsidiarity and proportionality. According to the Article 14 of the law numbers 373, both houses of parliament assess whether EU draft legislative acts comply with the principle of subsidiarity and proportionality based on Protocol number 2. If they start a subsidiarity control procedure, they notify the government. The government sends a summary of these draft laws to both houses within 10 working days of receiving them. If Parliament or one of the chambers thinks that the draft law violates the principle of subsidiarity, they can adopt a reasoned opinion explaining why. This reasoned opinion must be sent to the President of the European Parliament, the Council and the European Commission within 8 weeks of receiving the draft. The two houses also adopt resolutions to confirm if draft EU laws meet the principles of subsidiarity and proportionality, often adding their own comments. Additionally, if Parliament or either chambers find that an existing EU law violates subsidiarity, they can take the matter to the Court of Justice of the EU. In this case, an agent is appointed to represent Romania's interest in the court, and the government handles the official correspondence with the court. And now in the conclusion, I can say that it is important that national parliaments are active, as the democratic deficit is still relevant today in the EU. Good communication between the EU bodies and states is necessary in order to reduce this. Compared to other countries, the number of recent opinions submitted by Romania is remarkable but low. We can see that Sweden has more recent opinions submitted. Over the time, Romania has shifted from a more passive role in the EU legislative process to a more active and assertive participant, particularly in issues that have a direct impact on its national interest. Although it was initially slow to engage, Romania's increasing involvement in key yellow and procedures reflects a growing awareness of its ability to influence EU policy, as well as more developed approach to protecting its national prerogatives within the EU frameworks. Nevertheless, is the hope that the role of national parliaments in the EU will be strengthened in the future, especially in decision making. And thank you.